Hey there, welcome. We are back in our Thursday night webinar series, Alumni series. This is the kickoff week in April. We have four themes. One is success, then we talk money, then we like to do an alumni interview. And then we have what we call pro tools or professional skill sets. This month, it's quite a lineup. We have Peggy O'Neill tonight, a wonderful, inspirational person that we adore. And we have David Ponder next week talking about portfolio analysis, big contrast, but very fascinating for people with money. They want to deploy properly. Third week, we have Marcy Scheimoff decorating us with a wonderful interview. We'll be interviewed by Dennis Ramundi. And that'll be a lot of fun because for once she'll be able to be celebrated rather than trying to cheer everybody else up. And that'll be great. We'll celebrate her. And then we have Tom Morgan coming in with intercultural agility, dealing with other cultures effectively, how this can help you in the professional, in the workplace. We think this is going to be a great month. And we're asking our favorite Peggy to kick it off with her talk. And I can't do a full introduction, but basically Peggy has been an inspiration to everyone who's known her, I think, at MIU and remembers her fondly. And the fact that she left town is a big loss for us, but we hope she'll come back. Her topic tonight, walking tall, heightening confidence and stepping into your greatness. And we think Peggy has definitely done that. And so we asked her how to get there, and away you go.
All right. Well, thank you, Paul. And I didn't know I was a big inspiration to you and everyone walking the planet, but I'm glad I do now.
No, you are. You are, totally.
So,
oh, by the way, before you had, anybody has questions, something, you can put them in the chat and I'll weasel in and get Peggy to answer them.
Yeah, so you can ask questions as I go along. We'll do quick Q&A, of course, at the end. And I just, anybody who wants to turn on your camera, I would love to see you guys. You know, it's all about, that's one of the big advantages of Zoom is that we can see each other. And I like to know who's looking in. Right?
And if you haven't had a shower, it's okay. Just go ahead and leave it off.
Exactly. So when they asked me to do this, I was like, really, you want me to talk on success? And I thought about that. I have had, actually, there are many kinds of success, and that the success is for one, you know, we might have like a fixed idea about what success is, and we feel like we did get that or we didn't get that, or, you know, I mean, ultimately it could be anything. And in the end, most of us, I think, if we're in our 50s or 60s, we get to achieving many of our goals and we're like, well, what's next kind of thing, right? And the success just keeps getting wider and hopefully deeper, which means that we create more and more fulfillment for ourselves. So I'm going to address success sort of from that level today. I'm not a monetary, you know, I'm not going to talk like next week, or next month, you're going to have the guy talking about stocks and bonds. I'm not going to be talking about that kind of success. But I am going to be talking about the success of what it is to deal with challenges in your life and to maybe even feel like you get knocked down so far that you can't get up again, and to find that place inside that allows you to reach out and take the first baby step forward and perhaps get support or find your own inner support or your own inner strength that allows you to overcome one challenge at a time. And for me, that's been my life. It's like been being, okay, I don't know if everybody here, the only person's name who I recognize here besides Marcy and people that are showing themselves is Eva. Hi, Eva. Shout out to you, this daughter of our very close friend Gary St. Dennis and Joni, the lovely. And for everybody else, Paul didn't remind you guys that I am a little person, and which means I stand a whopping 3 feet 8 inches tall. So it has given me a very, very unique perspective and a very unique place to go through life. And it has brought a lot of challenges. And I'm going to talk about some of them tonight and some of the stories. And they come, the challenges for me have been on many levels, but I wanted to start with the story about how I ended up at MIU, because I think that that is a lot of people. I thought, well, any of my classmates are here. In fact, I talked to Deb Poneman before coming on the call tonight, and I told her this story, and she's like, I didn't know that story. I was like, I don't think anybody knows the story. So I graduated from high school. I grew up in the east side of Cleveland, and I ended up in college. My first college was the University of Hartford in Connecticut, and I wanted to go to school there because I was into photography and into psychology. And so they had both of those topics there. And so I went to school. I ended up going to school there, and I was a little bit shocked when I got there to find out that it was probably the most prejudiced place I had ever been. My roommate was so prejudiced towards me that she never spoke a word to me, and she slept in the same room with me for 3 months. And she moved out. I came home one day, all of her things were gone. There wasn't a note, there wasn't anything. So, I was glad she was gone because, it wasn't really very comfortable being around her. And she made sure, we didn't really see each other much. And I had the experience there of people, there was a lot of pointing and staring and laughing. And when I would go into the dining hall and sit down with people, they would get up and walk away. I mean, it was bad. It was very bad. So hold on one second. Okay, I'm at someone's house because I got way late in my day. So when I was at that school, the really cool thing is one day I was walking through the English building, and I saw a picture of an Indian guy in a white silk garb, and he's holding a rose and laughing. And I looked up at him, and I had in my high school age time, I had a breakthrough experience where I experienced unity, and I knew what it was, and I could feel what it was, and I was looking for someone to help me to understand about it. And I looked at his picture, and I was like, he knows. And then I read underneath, and it said, the nature of life is bliss. And I was like, he so knows. And so I signed up to go to the lecture, and I remember being all nervous that I was going to meet him there. And I come in, and there's just some guy there in a 3-piece navy blue suit. And I'm like, what is that dude? I want to meet him, right? And they're like, oh no, he's a fat chance little girl, kind of thing. And I was so disappointed, but I went ahead and I got initiated, and that was all good. And then they invited me to come and help with initiations on Saturday morning. So I used to come there, and I didn't really have very many friends at the school. There were 2 people in my dorm that I sort of said hello to, but anyway, it was a lonely time. And I started coming there, and I started recognizing that the quality of people at the TM Center were very different than the people at my college, that they were open-hearted, that they were intelligent, they were very accepting, and they were lovely to be around, and they were very welcoming, and very opposite of how I was feeling at school. And so I loved coming to the TM Center. And after being there a couple of months, my good friend, I made friends with Corinne Early, who, I don't know if anybody was at MIU back in 1974 when it first started. Yes, Diane. Yes, well, I met beautiful Corinne, and we became BFFs. And she said, let's go to the school. Marie, she has a college, let's go. And I came home and I told my parents. At the time, it was in Santa Barbara. My parents were like, over my dead body, you're going to Guru School in Santa Barbara, California. So they're like Republicans, super straight, super conservative. And then they changed the school to Iowa, and I talked them into it. So yay. So I got to go to MIU, and I was so happy that I did, because boy, was it a different experience than when I was at my other school at University of Hartford. People were just incredibly, first of all, happy. That probably set the stage, because everybody was meditating twice a day. we were young people. We didn't have a lot of responsibilities or a lot of baggage at that time, stress baggage. And people were happy and they were open and accepting and fun and lovely. And I just, Marcy will tell you, I was totally bliss. I was very, very happy during those years. And, went through school without too much. Hi, Dennis. There's my favorite DEAN. 5 years older than me. Can you believe he bossed me around for 4 years? He was only 5 years older than me. I'm like, how'd that happen? Anyway, hi, Dean. So I graduated finally, and Marcy was there. I was there. Diane, were you in the class of 78 or 79?
I was actually first on staff and then on faculty. I was teaching writing courses, but I was in the dorm with you when I first got there. We were on the same floor, and you showed me the ramps that your father made in the room, and I just thought that was so cool.
Well, he didn't make them, but somebody did, and he probably made. And did you were probably like 3 years older than me, right? Because you were teaching.
Oh, I never do numbers.
Okay, all right. So anyway, I graduated from school and then got out into life. I ended up in I ended up at another college, and this is a story about one of my biggest challenges in life. So I went to this photography school in Pasadena, California, called Art Center College of Design. Many people call it the Harvard of art schools. Hard to get in, hard to stay in, and hard to graduate from. And I got so I wasn't studying this. This school taught people how to be commercial artists. So they taught illustration, product design, car design, photography, film, and a couple other things like that. And I was in photography, and I studied commercial photography. And the first 2 years I was there, I used a big camera that was a 4x5 camera, like in the old fashioned shop and the guy puts the cloth over the head and there's the bellows and all that. And you load one sheet of film is this big, and you load it in the dark, and then you put it into your camera and you take one shot. Anyway, that is what I was using for the first 2 years of school. I had to put the camera in a suitcase in order to carry it around with me. My tripod weighed like 25 pounds. I weighed like 70 pounds. The lights in the studio were bigger than I was. The stands were so huge. It was every day was excruciatingly difficult. And sometimes I'd wake up and there'd be a voice on one side and be like, I don't want to go today. I can't make it. And the other voice in the school the other voice I would have would be like, Peg, you're talented at this, and you can do it if you just get through one challenge at a time. And I knew that I had a choice about which voice I could listen to. And so I listened to the voice that said, you can do it. And I started telling myself that. And every day I went there and I did my assignments and I did all the stuff. And it would take me a half an hour to tell you what I had to do in a week amount of work. I was at the school 70, 80 hours a week. I get a month from my graduation. The dean called me into his office and he says, congratulations on your upcoming graduation. It's been a big ordeal for you. And I'm like, you better believe it have. And he says, Peggy, but I want to warn you that when you go out into the world, you're not going to get hired because you're a little person. And I just looked at him and I was like, I don't know. I didn't say anything, I don't think. I just picked up my portfolio and walked out. I internalized the voice. I never told anyone about it. And unfortunately, in this case, the voice that said, I can't do it, overtook because it was somehow perceived as a voice of authority. I think I had gotten this message many times from my father. And I ended up not using my degree in photography. I ended up graduating, but I didn't, open a studio. I didn't show my portfolio to ad agencies. I didn't do any of that stuff. I went to Hawaii and sort of dropped out. And then I had a bunch of failed relationships. And in my mid-30s, even though I was meditating every day, I was feeling so depressed that I couldn't function. and I knew that I needed help, and I reached out and got help. And then, well, what happened was that I ended up finding out John Sobeka, who was a chiropractor in Fairfield back in the early 80s. Excuse me for a sec. Told me about a spiritual work school called the Diamond Approach. So I actually started doing some courses with them, and a little bit later I'm going to share with you about one of the significant experiences I had with them. But with those teachings, I started to recognize that, well, I'll tell you the story now, I guess. So what happened was I was doing a class on trying to sort of clear my childhood difficulties. And one night I did some cathartic work with punching pillows and all of that. I know, very TM-esque, right? Very TM-esque. And I punched the pillows, and all of a sudden I had, at the end, I lay back on my pillows. It was like 3 rounds of 45 minutes, very rigorous. My body was like, I was probably in an altered state of some sort. And I lay back on my pillows, and all of a sudden, I closed my eyes. I saw something in my heart that changed my life. And what I saw was a diamond. And it wasn't like a diamond you wear on your hand. It was like bigger than my whole body. And it went from above my head to below my toes. And light was streaming out in every direction. And when I saw the diamond, it was like something in me knew that this is the truth about who I am, that I am valuable, that my essential nature, I have a deeper nature than my personality and my history and my story. All of that is there, but this is something much more substantial and much more deep. And in recognizing that, it was sort of like the beginning, all the ideas about that people had projected onto me that something was wrong with me, and I had internalized that as my self-image, that all started that was the beginning of it to start to crumble and to dissolve, so that the full light of my divine nature, my pure creative intelligence, could shine through. And I was so grateful that I had the support to not only have that recognition, but then to continue to go on and to integrate that truth and to embody that truth. So it was not too long after that, a couple years after that, that I saw Marcy at a speaking. I told her I was a psychotherapist at the time, and I told her I was going to give a weekend workshop, and I called her up and we were talking, and she said, "Peggy, your destiny is to be a speaker." And I said, "No, Dharma, you said. Your Dharma is to be a speaker." And I said, "What's a speaker?" and so, she took me to the National Speakers Association, and she took me under her wing, and she helped me fly. And what a ride it's been. It's been amazing. So all along the way, I'm not gonna that's not the end of the story, because what I want to go into now is that all along the way, there have been challenges, and everybody has challenges. Everybody, some of mine have to do with prejudice. Some of them have to do with, it's in the photography school. I had a lot of physical disadvantages, right? Because I wasn't a big, tall, 6-foot tall guy that could, move around all that equipment with ease. And they even had a difficult time. And relational difficulties have been immense for me. So, but romantic relationships, not friendships. Friendships is easy. And so I have some things that I have identified as being the 3 or 4 biggest things that have helped me overcome the challenges in my life. And that's sort of what I wanted to share with you. So that's a little bit about my story. And just to finish the thing about Marcy and taking me to the speakers, for those of you who don't know me, I've gone on then to have a 20-year career in speaking. I'm an author, I'm a coach, and recently I developed a phone app called Tap for Joy. And it's free app in the Apple Store. You guys can get it. It teaches people to use acupressure tapping to reduce stress and increase happiness. And it's a really great thing. It can help with deep-rooted stresses, even trauma. So we can talk more about that later. So the one of the first things, anybody have any questions yet? Paul? Okay, I'll take that as a no and a water break. Okay, so one of the things that, okay, so one of the first things that I recognized was the thing that really got it, like when challenges come, right? So some people it's financial, some people it's health, some people it's relationships, some people it's self-esteem, some people it's mental functioning. You know, there are all kinds of challenges. We all have challenges in different ways, in different levels, and different. We all, I mean, we all experience challenges in many areas of our life to greater or lesser degrees. And one of the things that I notice that holds me back the most is when I let my critical voice get in my head and start beating me down. So if I make a mistake, or like when the dean, this is a perfect example, when the dean told me that nobody was going to hire me, you know, if that happened now with who I am now, I would have just said, screw you. And I would have gone off and tattled to him, to his superior, you know. But what I did is walked out, put my tail between my legs, didn't tell anybody about it, and internalized his voice. And every time I thought about taking my portfolio to ad agency, the voice would come up and say, no one will hire you. No one will hire you. And the tape ran the voice ran like a tape in my head. And it was the number one and probably only thing that stopped me from being able to utilize my immense talent as a visual artist. So that was, you know, a heartbreak, total heartbreak. And it was totally because of that. And there have been so many other experiences that I've had in my life. And I'm sure you guys all have your story too, about when hard knocks came and there was a voice that said, you can't do it, or you're not good enough, or you're not worthy. And the thing that I think is, I've been, you know, I'm a therapist and work with people and working on my own process. I think one of the most interesting things is that to find that the voice isn't always detectable. We don't always recognize that the voice is there on cognitive level, but our behavior is reflective of the fact that the voice is there, because we don't take a risk. We don't put ourselves out there. We don't take the next step. And so there is a way that we can deal with the critical voice. It's very helpful. And the thing, it's a 3-step process that I always tell people. It's pretty easy, but you have to pay attention. And that's the first step, is paying attention to catching the voice when you hear it come up. So it could be anything from I'm not enough to I can't do it, to all the iterations of I don't deserve it, or self-doubt, any of that. I'm too this, I'm too that, excuses, all of that can be classified as a critical voice, because it's all saying you can't do it. And what we need to do is pay attention when we hear it. Second step is to command the voice to stop. Just be very firm. And I like to say, stop. Like that, you know, use this inner strength to come up and use that strength to create boundaries with the critical voice. And the third step then is to just come back and notice the magic of the moment. Come back to what's happening in the moment and let yourself sense your arms and legs, look and listen, and pay attention to what's happening in the moment, rather than letting the voice in your head carry you on and on and on, right? Or take you away down the stream into the downward spiral. So that is a little talk about the three steps of silencing the critical voice. Anybody have any questions about that? Polly?
I don't really have a question, but I have a comment, and I think it is, you know, it's, and I don't know who this is from. It might be from Marcy. It might be from,
Marcy talks about this quite a bit too.
Kahneman, but there's this saying, it's not what they say, it's what you say to yourself afterwards.
Exactly.
Like, are you going to let that go in, or are you going to bounce that back to them?
Exactly.
And it's what they see is what they are.
Exactly.
They're sharing their inadequacy with you.
Exactly.
And you say, well, I hear your gift, but I'm not going to accept this gift of your experience of inadequacy, because it doesn't really mirror my own experience. So it's really hard to do, because obviously you need to stay away from those environments. You need to keep yourself insulated, because it's very hard to do the rebound where you say, okay, well, I hear your limitation, but it's not mine.
Yeah, and especially when it comes from an authority figure, I think that makes it even more tough. And that
because oddly, I mean, people are often drawn to unique and interesting people. People are often drawn. They might think, gee, this person might have a unique perspective on the world. This person has unique experience. And so you never know, you could have walked into a situation where people say, give us your vision, and so, and the other thing is, I don't know what you've done with your art since then, but I would encourage you that you still have an art career ahead of you. You still have a photography.
Well, I just made a phone app, and the design, I really had a lot of fun doing them.
There you are. So
yeah, that was awesome.
So I think that you can take the you can't take the art out of the artist. Still there.
It's true. It was a really good experience. It wasn't a good experience at the time, but it was a really
and there's another blessing.
Learning moment.
There's a brucha. There's another blessing, which is we can thank your first school for being such a dog, because it drove you to MIU. It's like that situation, that negative situation, if it had been more positive,
exactly,
you might not have made this journey. And so even though we look at that as a negative thing, it drove you in another direction. And sometimes your enemies are your teachers. And even that woman who treated you poorly, and rejected you, she drove you into our arms.
Exactly. And that brings me to my next point that I was going to talk about, which is that many times when challenges come our way, we think, why me? We think something's wrong with us. We think, this isn't fair. And that mindset right there starts the downward spiral, where we get caught in self-doubt and negative behaviors that take us in the direction of dysfunction and defeat, right? And what we can do, like silencing the critical voice, it's a matter of making a choice, which is to turn it around and to see the opportunity that lies within the challenge and reframe it as a gift of growth, of learning and evolution. And I have a zillion stories I could tell in my life from that, but I'm not gonna, I don't know, am I gonna tell? Well, the one that you just told, Paul, is a great example. And so I guess maybe the thing I'd like to do here is to ask everybody to think of a challenge that they have overcome in their life, and think about what it is that they learned. How did they grow? What was the positive aspect that came out of the challenge? And that is exactly, you can apply. It's easy to see in hindsight that you look back at a challenge, you're like, oh, I had cancer. Oh, I lost all my money. Or, oh, this person sued me. Or, oh, I had this divorce. Or I lost a dear one to death. Or, we all the challenges, right? And it's usually only much later, that we can look back and say, yeah, and this is the silver lining. This is the good thing that came from it. But I think that when you're in the challenge itself and you're feeling it's not fair, that's a great time to ask yourself, what's the gift in this challenge? How is this helping me? What is it that what's life, what's nature offering me so that I can grow into my full potential? Am I being asked to forgive myself, another? Am I being asked to open my heart? Am I being asked to be more bold, to take a risk, to be more gentle, to be more caring, to set boundaries? I mean, and the list goes on, right? All the lessons that we learn in life, there's so many of them, right?
I just want to say, it's kind of like when I'm driving behind a slow car on the highway, I go, why am I behind a slow car? Am I being delayed or am I being saved? I don't really know. And I often wonder, if as most Sagittarians have been married a number of times, just seems to be required. But this recent marriage, we passed 20 years. So the question is, what would I have done if I rewrote my life? Would I have made those same mistakes? Would I have just gone to Perusia for 20 years? And then, so I don't know. But the thing is, I think everyone starts intrinsically. It's not like original sin, but we're all tiny when we're young. We're all inadequate. We're all not complete. And we all feel, we're not quite, don't have it together. And the maturation process of becoming a complete human being is something that everyone struggles with. And I think that we all go through those processes of trying to achieve wholeness and trying to be a complete human being. And so I think there's no one that doesn't have that challenge.
The thing that I find so amazing about what you're saying, Paul, is that challenges in life are designed for that. We don't become whole because we want to. We become whole because we're forced to, because we have to work through the challenges in our life. Because every time we work through a challenge, we become a better person. We become a more knowledgeable person. We come to know ourselves and others in a deeper and wider way. We become more wise, more intuitive, more compassionate. The list goes on, right? So that's the whole purpose of challenges. And people think that challenges, this is why this is such an important topic, is because people confront cancer or bankruptcy or divorce and say, why me? I'm just going to collapse and give up. And if they could just in that moment think, well, what's being asked of me to learn here? Am I having to learn how to be a sovereign human being? Am I learning how to be a forgiving human being? Am I learning how to be an accountable human being? All those things are the qualities that we need to become whole. So
another thing I've heard is, it's okay to fall down, but it's not that good to lie there.
No, exactly. It's not. But I'm saying what helps you get up is by recognizing that there's an opportunity for wholeness. Marcy, what do you want to say? Oh, you were leaning forward. I thought you had something you were going to say.
I wanted to lean forward. That's it. That was just her leaning.
Yeah. Leaning in. Okay. Any questions?
No, what I want to say, Peg, is I love everything you're saying.
Well, I have to
And
say,
you are really an inspiring walking example of everything that you're speaking of. And you
sweetie, thank
speak
you.
from the heart and from your true experience.
Thank you. I'm winging it, right now. Even though, I know like my points, but anyway, thank you, sweetie. So let's see.
One other thing I wanted to throw in is, my wife says this because my wife is always my teacher in so many ways. It's indescribable, but she uses the phrase, what's the can do space?
What's the can do say? Yeah,
what's the can do space?
Exactly.
What can you do? What part of it, because she's a Pilates teacher and she deals with a lot of people my age who have not really taken good care of their bodies necessarily. They've worked on consciousness, but they've forgotten to do their asanas. And and so she deals with a lot of people have mobility issues. What's the can-do space? Of course, she deals with anyone who has physical problems, has emotional stuff. So there's that she deals with too. But what's the can-do space here? What can you do?
And one of the things that we all can do, and this is a great thing, I wasn't really going to talk about this, but one of the things that we all can do is reach for help and reach out for support. because we need, there's to build our wholeness and to become fully God realized, which is why everyone comes to MIU. And if they didn't know it before they got there, they sure as heck should have known it by the time they got their diploma, that we are here for consciousness to become aware of its amazingness. And the more that we grow and evolve, the more we become aware of how amazing we are. We become more aware of how amazing others are. We become more aware of how amazing nature is. And we connect, and that whole experience is the God experience of God realizing itself. And that is why we're here. And so I forgot what I was going to say, but
That's okay.
I did want to make the point that that we need support on many, many levels. And I mean, I have learned how to eat a certain way and how to take care of my body in a certain way and dress a certain way. And, and I've had 60 plus years to learn how to function as a being of wholeness. And it takes, and I've had a lot of support. And so I think that's another really great point of when challenges come, that there are people that you can go to get support. And I also think that you need to be discerning about who you ask for help, that you don't just ask your family member, maybe because they might be very critical, or they may have projections on you about not being enough, or they might have their own problems that they can't really help you, or whatever. And so finding the people that you can, that exhibit, I would say, look for people that exhibit the qualities that you're wanting to have yourself, and talk with them and see how you can get them to support you, and just keep following your heart in terms of what you want to learn, how you want to feel better, and how you can grow into a person who feels alive, vital, happy, and connected to everything. So that takes, it takes a community or village or whatever that saying is. It takes a lot of people. So that would be another point I would say about overcoming challenges, is asking for help. And anybody who has addiction problems, there's the 12-step programs are always so helpful for people. And anybody who has more severe problems than that, those folks should definitely be reaching out and asking for help.
I want to bring up a term, if I could, that my wife talks about a little bit, and it's a term called spiritual bypassing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And it has to do with people who, they meditate a lot, they work on consciousness, but they don't necessarily address the issues in their life. They don't necessarily maybe address the dark side of the stuff they grew up with. And so they think, I'm just going to meditate and it's all going to go away. And, to me, that doesn't create wholeness. And I also want to make a special shout out to the men in this group, because women are in general, in addition to many wonderful stellar qualities, multitasking and I think a very cosmic orientation, they are very good at creating networking and creating support groups. And men are not trained, at least in my generation, are not trained that it's okay to reach out and to get support. And I think that I want to give anybody on this call, you now have carte blanche to get support. And another thing I want to mention is how precious all of you are to us, to me, and because during COVID we've been very isolated, and it's made me treasure our connection and the path of all these people moving towards wholeness together, how important that is, and how much we miss each other, how much we've taken for granted seeing each other, taken for granted being together. And I'm really thankful for you to gather here on these evenings and try and create some connection. And so I just think that providing support and asking for support, it's a gift. It's a gift. I can assure you that if somebody asks me for some help, I feel honored. I feel honored that they'd ask me.
Yeah,
And
and if another point there is that if you feel that you can't support the person, you can support them in finding the right person that can help for the specific thing that they have. And it reminds me of a very potent quote that I think it maybe comes from the Marshall Rosenberg Nonviolent Communication Group that says, healing happens through connection. It might be a Brene Brown thing, but that is certainly the case. That if you think of any time when you've gotten better in your life, it's because of the connection that you've made. And usually it's not only one way, and usually, to take note that you connect with others, but also it helps you when you're doing your healing, you connect more deeply with yourself. And that connection is ultimately what will support you in living in wholeness and being a radiant light of pure consciousness. So, and also, Paul, about the preciousness, that brings me to another thing that I wanted to talk about, which is that the story that I told at the beginning about finding the diamond in myself. I wrote a children's book about it called Little Square Head. And it's about a girl who has a square head. And she gets teased, and she in the woods crying one day, and she's saying, no, but I'll never have any friends. And the water is magical and speaks to her and says, if you look in your, come over here and look in the water. And when she goes over and looks into the pool of water there, she sees a big diamond in her heart. And the water says to her, she says, what's that? And the water says, that's who you really are. And she says, no, I'm just an ugly girl with a square head. And the water says to her, no, this is your true nature. This is who you really are. And the more you see yourself in this way, the more you'll like be happy, right? And so over time in the story, she gets in these challenges, and she remembers the diamond in her heart. She remembers that her essential nature is value. And even though she looks different, she is a perfect expression of the divine, and that she has a unique role in life, and that she has something that she brings that's unique to every situation. And in the end, and through the story, it's like a 23-page book. I'm making it sound like it's really long, but it's pretty short. And over the course of the book, she gets three gifts. The water says to her, if you keep seeing yourself in this way, you'll get gifts. And the gifts that she gets are courage, confidence, and compassion. And at the end, it says, even though she still looked different from other children, she knew that her newfound gifts of courage, confidence, and compassion had changed her life forever. From that day on, it would be her sparkling, shining diamond heart she would show to the world. And so that's a fairy tale version of my experience. And another speaker, Patricia Fripp, had mentioned one time to take sort of like a significant life experience and turn it into a story, a children's book. And so that's how that book came about. And I think that as meditators, this is especially an important point, that as much as we can to do the practices that we need to do to keep our stress levels down, so that we have the capacity to see clearly our inward experience and recognize that the mysterious expanse, greatness, amazingness of consciousness that we have within us, and to be able to let that consciousness move through us and express, because when the consciousness moves through us, it has all those qualities of creative intelligence, right? Intelligence, humor, love, kindness, strength, all that stuff. So, and the more that we, especially when challenges come, it tends to make us feel small inside. It tends to make us feel beaten down. It tends to make us feel like we're not enough. I mean, that's really the biggest message for me that comes through when I feel that I've fallen flat on my face, or I set this goal and I just so didn't meet the mark, and my critical voice starts getting on my case about it. And if I can silence the critical voice and create a neutral environment enough to be in a space of acceptance, that I can tap into that deeper nature inside myself, which is my divine nature, and express that in my life. And to do that for me has taken like 20 or 30 years of work. It's not like something that just happens overnight. It in a tandem with my meditation practice, there have been a lot of other practices that I've done that have dealt with my deep unconscious beliefs about myself, trauma that I'd held from childhood, and a host of other things, including taking care of my body, eating well, and doing what I can to keep my mind clear and my heart open. So like a lot has gone into it. I've gotten a lot of support along the way, but I just want to remind everybody that they are valuable too. Every person on the planet is valuable. And the more, I believe that the more people can recognize their innate divine nature, the more peace we're going to have on the planet. That's the real key.
And at the end of that chapter that you just wrote, there's a quote from Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. You know this quote, but I was going, what is that quote? We're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having human experience. And so that's the miracle, the amazing thing for me as a writer and a poet. I'm amazed. Every individual is a universe. Every individual contains the wholeness, contains the entire universe. And that's why each one is so precious. It's just amazing. And what we have is this technology to contact that inner consciousness. And that's an amazing thing.
That is right. That's right. Exactly.
Anyway.
Okay, you guys, you need to ask me some questions because
okay, we don't have to go on for hours and hours. I mean, but
well, just let's see if anybody has any questions.
I have a question.
What is it?
The question I have, Peggy, we talked a little bit before your talk this evening, and as you know, I find you tremendously inspiring and inspirational and all of those things, and you are a dear friend. So I want to put it in that context, but you have a lot of wisdom, and I'm always trying to learn. And one of the great diseases of our culture, not just our culture, but worldwide of collectively of human beings, is prejudice. All right.
Yes.
You have encountered it, you've described it, and there's all types of prejudice on all kinds of levels. What can education, what can schools do? What can people that work with kids, parents do to not to free young people from the burden of being prejudiced? Because if you are prejudiced, your life is very miserable usually. And if you are prejudiced towards somebody, you make them miserable. So it's spreading misery. Now, as a TM guy for many years, I know when I go to my essence, we're all the same. We're not different. But coming out into the world and dealing with it, look, I've had my prejudices. I've had prejudices, so I'm not immune to this. And how would you, with all your experience in really dealing with this, what advice or what do you think can be done to strengthen us so that we get beyond that?
Well, that's a whole other topic I talk on, which is diversity.
25 words left. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, ultimately is to keep an open heart, because the heart, when we see with our heart, we see sameness. And when we see with our mind, we see differences, because the mind's job is to discern and dissect and make differences. So the more that we can allow the intelligence in our heart to be activated and to inform our brain what our experience is, and the more we allow ourselves to appreciate the beauty in other people, the less the prejudice is going to be there. That's my simple answer.
That's a great answer. And I think you should, that's something we should spread around because it's something we all, we deal with every day.
Another answer is do TM, because when stress and anxiety gets into the nervous system, it takes us the brain waves, as we all know, get up into the beta and high beta, and we're in survival. And then all that we're doing is we're in a defensive mode. We're in a mode of survival, and we're in a mode of separation. So the more that we can keep our nervous system regulated to be able to deal with difficulties and deal with stress and still sustain and maintain low beta and alpha waves. I'm talking scientific, science right now. That we can sustain inner peace is another way to say it. The more that we're going to be able to allow creative expression and connection. But if people are, and that's why I think that the world is so crazy right now, it's because the fear is being generated from every direction and people are scared, and then all they're doing is trying to survive, and they can't recognize the unity. They can only recognize the differences, and it breaks my heart.
Now, there's another angle on this, and I'm going to mention the name Eckhart Tolle, which is, the idea of the now. And look at the word prejudice. The word prejudice means to prejudge.
Yes.
And the thing you mentioned about TM is the idea of freshness, experiencing the new, experiencing something anew. If you have prejudged everything, you're not actually experiencing what comes to you. And the idea in poetry and all these different things, they celebrate the now, they celebrate the moment. The idea of coming out of meditation and life is fresh again. And so you can't prejudge if you're experiencing something for the first time. If you don't have all these lines in your mind, that goes in this box, and this goes in that box, and that goes in that box, then you're actually experiencing the now. And I think this is a factor as well.
Yes. And I think another thing that people can really do is pay attention to not just the critical voice that they have inside themselves, but the critical voice that they project onto others, and to be aware of it and to look at it and say, am I really threatened here? Am I really being threatened? Am I in danger? Do I need to create separation? Do I need to make myself better, or make this person less, or treat this person badly because I'm feeling threatened? Usually the threat is something from our reptilian brain. It comes from our, way, ancestors before we even had made a tree. So I heard the phrase today, before pyramids, it's like, we can become aware of prejudicial expressions of judgment, of separation, and I'm better or I'm less than others. That's what creates a lot of the difficulty and the violence and the conflict and the lack of being able to see sameness and be able to resonate and talk about needs. What are people needing, so that the needs can be met, and then all of the conflict just goes away. But instead they, do everything up here about the conflict itself. So that's another answer for you, Dean.
Thank you.
Prejudice can actually be a negative thing in terms of safety. You might assume something's safe when it's really not. And it's not just a matter of danger, it's a matter of safety. There's plenty of people who are narcissists and people who look safe, and really they're not. So, part of the alertness in the environment for safety is to experience, things in the now.
That's true. So Dennis, what do you do? What do you do to help with prejudice?
Well, I think to directly interact with people about it. And usually when it comes to any type of prejudice, whether somebody's racist or homophobic, or it goes on, many categories, is to point that out to people. And people, most of their response, generally my response when it's ever been pointed out to me is, oh, no, I'm not. But usually you are. And then it's something that you have to be aware of. Yeah, you have to admit it. And then you have to work on it. I have a friend, it's a little story. I'll just say Jack, this guy, Jack Cresaber, I went to college with. And he used to substitute teach in Trenton, New Jersey, in very urban school, mostly African-American. He's a white substitute teacher that comes in. And the kids would push you a little bit anywhere and the kids, he said one day he was in there and a kid said, you're just another prejudiced white guy. And he said, yeah, you're right. And he goes, I don't want to be this. I want to get beyond this. But I realize I've grown up in a culture that's great. The kids really responded well, he said. And so I think that sort of thing,
That's awesome.
it's constantly a process of self-exploration and pointing it out to yourself and allowing other people to point it out to you. And then, you know, you meditate, you transcend, and you go away with that realization, okay, that I am not my thoughts, I'm not my feelings, I'm not my body, I'm something much, you know, I'm as as was said before, when you know we're spiritual beings acting out as humans, whatever. That's who I am. That's how you are. This is how we're connected. It's not solved overnight. It's something. It's a lifetime of work. And I think that there are like educational institutions and, you know, governments and all that that work for it and work against it. You know, so it's a constant battle between good and bad.
I think that the job of accepting all the others as they are is equally as difficult and ongoing as our own acceptance of ourselves.
Exactly.
It's not only that we accept our weaknesses, frailties, and failures, but also that we accept our greatness, that we accept our divine nature, that we accept the opportunities that we're given in order to shine the light of God that's in us. So I want to thank everybody for coming. I think the time is up. I didn't hear too many questions. You guys should speak up more from the silent there. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for thank you. Sorry. Thank you for coming. Before I go, I just wanted to remind you that I gave a couple of tips tonight. And the first one was about silencing your critical voice. We talked about getting support. We talked about reframing your challenges as gifts. We talked about the diamond within and remembering your divine nature as you move through your life. And then this last little bit about remembering that each of us have responsibility to be aware of our self when we're interacting with others, to keep an open heart, to keep an open mind, so that we can create the world of peace that we all want to live in.